Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 13, Carnegie. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
In this episode, we're going to discuss what we've been playing lately. Then we're going to do a feature review of Carnegie by Quinn Games. And then we'll discuss the things that we are excited about. But first, I've got to mention, for the first time ever in the Longest Turn studio, we have our good friend Mark here with us.
Woohoo!
Woo! Yeah.
Hello, Mark.
Hey guys, greetings and salutations. Happy to be here.
So
Happy to have you. This is great.
yeah, this is awesome. So this is the first time we got a fourth mic, and this is the first time we're going to record with four people. Mark, if you've listened to our podcast, you know that he is a pitmaster, among other things. He's been in our gaming group for 4 or 5 years, and he is a Memoir 44 master.
This is true. I've talked a lot about Memoir 44, and most of the times I've talked about it, I've played with Mark. It's been awesome.
So, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners and what got you into gaming, how long you've been playing, that sort of thing, when you started playing with this group?
Sure, absolutely. So I got involved with this group a couple of years ago, and had the good fortune to have good friends close by, right? And started sitting in, and it seemed like at first they just needed somebody to take the last place trophy week after week.
Whatever.
But I was glad to do it. And fortunately, I've learned a few things since those early days, and can defend myself a little bit better against you gentlemen. But
Last game night, I think you won every game you played, right?
this is true.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet
This
if
is
I
true.
pulled
It
up
did go
my
well.
stats, most of the time Mark beats me, I think.
That's probably true.
That's not hard.
That's definitely true.
I'm
it is definitely true. But among other things that Tyler mentioned, I'm also the one who's most likely to pull I needed an undo 3 moves after it's too late. So that's a little bit about me and my gaming experience. But
That's a common thing for all of us, I think.
Yeah, we all do our fair share of that, right?
Yeah.
it's part of my shtick, and I just come to expect it. But it's been great, and I'm thrilled to death to be here and contribute.
So Mark's originally from Texas.
That's right. Yeah, Austin, Texas is where we came from. I was born and raised in Texas, and now I'm living the good life in the Rocky Mountains, and we love it. It's been great to be here.
I'm just glad you brought the Texas barbecue. I mean, that's
I mean, somebody had to.
right. Right.
There's a lot of great things about being here, but unfortunately, the barbecue scene is not as strong. So I felt like a moral obligation to. That was my contribution.
So I mentioned a couple episodes I was in Kansas City, right? Which they claim has some of the best barbecue out there.
It's different, though.
It is different. Like, it's not the same kind. It was really good. I'm not saying that. But I couldn't help but think as I was eating it that the brisket I was eating had nothing on Mark's brisket. And I was a little disappointed that I couldn't be eating that.
If we're being honest, I am a fan of Kansas City barbecue. I've been there myself. It is quite good. But I share the same sentiment that you do.
Yeah.
And we love our listeners in Kansas City. There's nothing wrong with your barbecue. It's fantastic.
But
I'm a fan.
Everybody has a preference, though,
That's right.
Sure.
It's a different style.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was looking the other day. We do a cabin con, a weekend getaway in November, and it was time to start planning for like finding the house or the cabin that we're going to rent. And just thinking, we also do kind of a planning meeting where we come together, we have Mark's brisket, we pick and rank which games that we're going to take and plan out the trip. And my mouth just started salivating thinking about the brisket that, if Mark is so gracious to do this year, then
100%.
yeah, awesome.
I'm in. I am always in.
We have
Yes.
it actually recorded now, so no backing out.
Yeah.
No backing out.
Yeah, right. I mean, even if the cabin weekend falls through, we're still doing
we're
the
still
planning.
doing it.
meeting. We still need the brisket.
Absolutely. We're going to plan for nothing and eat brisket.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
Sounds amazing.
Well, we're glad you're here with us. Let's go ahead and get started with what we've been playing lately. Tyson, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'd love to. The game that I wanted to talk about that I've been playing lately, and I've only played it one time, but it's one that was interesting. This was a really popular game when it came out. It came out in 2019, and this is Pipeline. Pipeline is designed by Ryan Courtney. The artist is Ian O'Toole, so you know it's going to be great. And one of our favorite publishers, Capstone Games, is the publisher of this game. So I was really excited to play this game because it had all the trappings, right? All those things are things I like. I don't think I'd ever played a game from Ryan Courtney before, but this was a good experience. I also had the opportunity that I got to play the game with one of the developers, Tim Kaiser. One of the first things he said after teaching the rules was, I asked, hey, so what's a good score in this game? And he said, it's probably for you going to be between 200 and 500 points. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then he said, but I'm the developer, so you don't want to get your hopes up. And he did a great job of explaining the game. He did a great job of teaching it, and it ended up being a really good experience. And he got a lot more points than me in the end, which rightfully so. If you're going to develop the game, you better be able to play a lot better.
I was going to say, how did he know you're not very good at games?
Yeah,
Wow.
well, I mean,
Shots fired.
he must have listened to the podcast, right? No, I ended up doing better than I expected. But so this game, what it is it's an economic industry management and manufacturing style game in which there's some worker placement elements to it as well. You're trying on your turn to develop a system of pipeline to be able to refine your oil. So you start with crude oil, and you can buy different types of oil, but you're trying to refine its quality to the highest level. There are several different levels of quality that you can get this oil through. And so you're trying to design this pipeline network to refine your oil. And there's all these little tiles that you're getting to do that, and what they essentially do is the length of your tile will determine how much oil that you can refine throughout the game. So the game is going through a number of turns and rounds, and you're trying to score a bunch of points based off of the type of oil you have. They have what are called, I think, evolution or some end game scoring cards, which are different every round. They also have a number of different things that vary up the gameplay. So there's a lot of variability in this game, and you have abilities to like upgrade your actions and the things that you can do. So there's a lot of like little things going on in this game, but I didn't get it very well at first. As I was playing through the game, it wasn't clicking for me. This was just one of those games that I was looking at the board, I was looking at what situation was going on, and it took me a long time for the game to click, and I was just going through the motions. But by the end of the game, I realized that there was a viable strategy for me to kind of make up a lot of my points. And I realized it was to break my pipeline. Like, because of what end game conditions were on the table, I had the option to go ahead and say, I'm just going to tank everything, because if I tank stuff, one of the end game conditions allowed me to have score like hundreds of points for having a small pipeline of a certain type of oil. So there are several different colors of oils that you can get through. There's, I think, orange and teal and gray and maybe another one that I can't think of right now. But there's these different types of oils. So if you had all of them as being really low pipelines, like you're going to score a lot of points at the end. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm going to end up destroying my pipeline, because that's the best way for me to get points in this game. And then somebody else noticed that I was doing it, and she did the same thing and ended up beating everybody with that strategy. And I was like, oh, I thought I could have won with it. And I didn't end up winning, but I had a lot of fun with this game. It's one of those games that one play is not enough. I need to play this game again to really get my head around it. At first, I was worried that I wouldn't like it because I just wasn't grokking it. And then at a certain point, it kind of clicked, and I started really enjoying it. But I didn't get a second chance to play it. So it's one I want to try again. But yeah, that's Pipeline.
So is it an unforgiving game, would you say?
I thought it was. Like, as I was going through the game, I was thinking, I've ruined my whole game. I'm not going to be able to get back from this very easily. It's not great for me in this specific situation because I thought it was going to be unforgiving. But then I saw that strategy that I could score a lot of points. And so it's similar to, we've talked about Imperial Steam, right?
Yes, we have.
We've talked about the points, the amount of points you can score is huge at the end game or in certain swings by getting certain contracts in Imperial Steam. Pipeline had a similar feeling to me in that at the end I literally could score like hundreds of points off of one or two different things.
Is the point disparity as big as Imperial Steam?
I didn't feel like it was, but again, this was off of one play.
Right.
I ended up scoring like between 500 and 600 points, I think. And then the two people who beat me got close to like 900, 1,000 points, somewhere in that range. So there is a point disparity, but it didn't feel the same as like Imperial Steam did.
Didn't beat you down.
It didn't feel that way, but I want to try Imperial Steam again, but I don't think that this one left me with the hopelessness I felt from that first game of Imperial Steam.
I didn't feel hopeless.
That's because
you slaughtered me.
You destroyed us. You won that one. I think Ben was close behind.
Ben and I were 100 points apart, and then you guys
we were like 8,000 points behind.
500 or 600 or
500 or 600.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but that was reflective of my teach, I think.
I don't know.
And it's an imposing first play, I think.
I don't think
there's a lot going on in that one.
So with Imperial Steam, the only reason I felt a little bit hopeless was because I didn't clearly have an understanding of the point swing. Honestly, having Tim explain to me that you're likely to score between this range, and he says, but my likely score range is going to be up here. It gave me the perspective out the gate to be like, oh, okay, so there's going to be a potential huge disparity here.
And it's a game that benefits from multiple plays.
Exactly.
Yeah. I looked at it. I was going to try it out. It looked a little crude to me.
Oh my gosh.
The oil? No?
You don't have to explain it.
Okay.
Amazing.
I got blank stares a little bit.
You did, but it wasn't because I didn't get the joke.
I picked up on it pretty quick.
All right. I've always wanted to try it. The fact that it comes from Capstone Games, I mean, they're just on a roll lately. We haven't had the opportunity to play it in our group.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't love about it is honestly from an Ian O'Toole game, it didn't look as pretty as I expected it to look. Now, that's got nothing against the game design or even Ian O'Toole. It looked great, but it was just there was a lot of white space, and there was the individual player boards looked a little bland to me.
That's what I was getting. I have pictures of it up now, and it kind of surprises me for an Ian O'Toole game. It does look a little bland.
Yeah,
right? And I was going to ask you if that's just, pictures don't do it justice type of thing, but it seems like maybe that's just the design of this one, right?
Exactly. As soon as I sat down at the table, because like I hadn't looked at it too much. I'd seen some pictures of it, but I hadn't like looked in depth in it. As soon as they said, "Hey, you want to play Pipeline?" I was like, "Oh, that's Ian O'Toole. That's a Capstone game. I'm interested." Yes. But then when I looked at it, I was like, "Huh, this doesn't have the same kind of Ian O'Toole flair to it." Like if I didn't know Ian O'Toole had been the artist on this one, I probably wouldn't have guessed. But yeah, that was Pipeline.
Awesome.
Cool. I've been playing a few games. One of them is the new Azul Queen's Garden. So we've talked a little bit about Azul in previous episodes. This is the latest and greatest. It is designed by Michael Kiesling, like all of the other Azuls. Shocker. The artist is Chris Quilliams. So we played this, I think, about a week and a half ago, a few weeks ago maybe. It's a similar game to all of the other Azuls in that you're drafting, but it is, I think, considerably more thinky, right? So it's been described to me before as kind of the gamer's Azul, right? So the way this game works is you have 4 stacks of, and I always forget the name of these, garden expansion tiles. So the game lasts over 4 rounds. So you take one of these garden expansion tile stacks, and then you take 4 tiles from the bag and place them on top of these garden expansions. And then you take your player actions. So you can draft these tiles when it comes to your turn. So the rules around drafting are you can take the same color but a different shape, or the same shape but a different color. And that's kind of the theme around the whole game. That's how almost everything works in the game. There are 6 different shapes, and the theme is you're trying to build a garden for the queen, I think is the whole
Hence
theme.
the title.
Right.
That
Shocker,
makes sense.
right?
Okay.
Yep. Queen's Garden. So you got like trees, you got butterflies, you got
Birds.
birds. So when it comes to your turn, you draft a tile. If you draft a tile off of the garden expansion tile, then you take that garden expansion off with any tiles remaining on it, and then you put 4 more tiles on that garden expansion tile. So then more tiles are available to draft, right? So you go around until everybody has either drafted or has passed. Another thing you can do on your turn is you have this reserve board. So when you draft tiles, they go onto the reserve board. To get tiles off of the reserve board, you have to pay a certain amount of tiles in order to get them into the garden. So it follows the same rules. You either have to pay a tile that is the same shape, different color, or same color and different shape. And these extra tiles go into a box, and once the bag is empty, then the tiles from the box go to refill that bag like other Azuls. You do that until all 4 rounds are done, and whoever has built the best garden is the winner. You get points based on tiles being adjacent to each other and in groups. And if you have at least 3 that meet certain criteria, whether it's color or shape, then you're going to score those tiles at the end. So if you only have 2 together that meet that criteria, then you don't get points for it, but you have to make sure you at least have 3 in order to get those points. Like I said, it's a real thinky game. It's kind of hard, I think, the first round to get your head around it, but I really enjoyed it. One thing to keep in mind is you can get yourself in a bad spot in this game if you're not careful. We played with our buddy Ben, and he got himself in a bad spot. And if you don't, it's a lot of points to get out of a rut potentially, because you take minus points at the end of a round if you have to get tiles off of your reserve board. He was able to successfully get out of his rut, but it kind of set him back a little bit when he did it.
Given that there's a finite number of resources that you can obtain, and once you have them, you have to use them, or they fill up all the other slots that you could use for things that you do need. That didn't play out so well for him.
Yeah.
Interesting wrinkle. I was glad he learned, and it wasn't us that had to learn that way. But
right. Yeah. I think we learned from his misfortune, basically.
And we were very sympathetic, by the way. You could just tell we were like, oh, gee, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's terrible that's happening to you. Yeah. But I liked it. What did you think about it?
I liked it. I didn't find it super similar to the other Azul games that I've played. Conceptually, they felt like they were from the same family, but it felt like a game that would stand on its own. So I did enjoy that. I felt like probably the first half, I was just letting the game kind of play out. I wasn't really sure what the strategy needed to be. But after a couple of rounds, I think it started showing up a little more clearly. And I enjoyed it.
That was one of my questions was it a stretch to throw the Azul label on there? And it sounds like it wasn't. But it is the most different from the other 3, you think?
Yeah, it's got drafting, right? So it's got the same mechanic, even though it's executed a little bit different. So it feels like an Azul game, but it definitely makes you think a little bit more, right? So I think it fits for sure.
So you said it was more thinky, right? I'm curious. It may just be the colors in this game and the fact that it's an abstract game, but I'm getting vibes of like Vivid Memory, and the fact that you said it was thinky. Which one is more thinky brain burning? Because it's the same time period as well, so 45 minutes to 60.
Vivid Memories broke my brain.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I could play that game again, and we talked about it before. If I think it's the type of game that you play more and you get better at,
right?
Vivid Memories. This one, it was not nearly as brain burning as Vivid Memories.
So it's not as gamery a game as that potentially. So like,
No.
At what point would I be able to introduce this to somebody, like somebody who's played games at all, or is it somebody who's more hobby gamer? Like, where does this one fall?
I think you introduce one of the other ones first in the Azul line, and then you introduce Queen's Garden after that. I think the concepts are not drastically different, but the fact that you're drafting tiles in the same color, different shape, same shape, different color, and you have to use that same methodology to get points off of your reserve board onto your garden board, and the drafting initially to make sure you're set up to be able to place, that whole trying to figure that out is where the complexity comes in.
And that's where I was thinking Vivid Memory to a degree, where I'm grabbing these specific colors from one spot and trying to put them into a different spot. And that's where I was thinking. But
yeah. And I didn't mention when you're placing on your garden board, there's rules there as well. And when you're placing adjacent, it has to follow those rules. So you got to make sure you're not getting yourself in a bad spot on the garden board where you're placing. If you surround certain things, then you get these joker tiles that are wild. So you're trying to surround things. It's just making sure you don't get in a bad spot is probably where the hard part of the game comes in.
Do you think, is this one that your family will enjoy?
Yeah, I think so. It's not, I think they'll like it a lot.
Cool.
And I think I tried to think where this one ranked in the Azuls. I only have one game.
It's
I'm
hard
not quite sure where that's at yet. I think it has the potential to be maybe 2. I don't know yet, because I think
behind the original.
I think so. I go back and forth. The original, Summer Pavilion. I mean, those both are about the same for me. Yeah. I think Stained Glass of Sintra is probably the lowest. So this is probably third at the moment, with the possibility of becoming higher with more plays.
what about you, Mark? Which ones have you played?
So I've played the Azul original, and this is the second iteration that I've played. And so, to answer your question, I think that if this was your first play, you could grasp the concepts. I think you would struggle a little bit. But if you're familiar with the concept of drafting and realizing how you need to think a couple of steps ahead, because the pieces that you need may not necessarily be there when it's your turn, and you need to have plan A and B and C. Like if you're accustomed to that kind of thinking and you've played those types of games, I think you could probably jump in and do okay.
That makes sense. So basically, Azul, the base game, you don't have to think too far ahead. Like, I mean, it benefits you to, obviously, but like you could seriously just play what's available to me at the moment, as opposed to this one sounds like you may need to have a little bit more of a plan going forward.
Well, and we played with 3 players, right?
Yep,
and so there wasn't a ton of contention for tiles that we needed, but there were a handful of times when, one of us would make a play and the other guys would say, that's the one I needed, or I wish I would have had that, right? And so, with the 4 players, I think you'd see a little bit more of that. And if, to the beginner player who's not used to having to adjust like that, I think that's where the struggle is. So if you can get ahead of that concept from other games, you'd still be able to enjoy it, I think.
That is Azul, Queen's Garden.
Mark, what have you been playing lately?
So I unfortunately have been on the road for the last number of weeks, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and play with the usual group like you guys have. But I thought it would be appropriate to throw in a plug for some of the digital content we've had. We've had a couple of games that we've played on BGA, which are always fun. But while I've been traveling, I've been playing Scythe, the app. So if you guys aren't familiar with that, I highly recommend getting the app when you're sitting in airports or on planes with no internet connectivity. You can still get your gaming fix in. That's been enjoyable. Kevin mentioned in a previous podcast that we had played, Memoirs 44, the Pacific Theater. He and I had a great time playing a couple of weeks back. And, just a personal anecdote about that. That's a game that I've been playing with some of my younger kids. And since it's not super complicated, they really enjoy it. But they've really taken an interest in kind of history and World War II and some of the things that they've gleaned from playing the game, which is really cool. And then, since we just had Memorial Day, they had a bunch of questions about oh yeah, I remember when we played this, and I remember we used this scenario. And anyway, so it's lent itself to some really cool conversations with my teenage boys, which is always great. And
Not only your teenage boys, but us, because you've educated us on a couple of times we played that. So
Yeah, I love that about the game. The little flavor text that's before each scenario is just, I never skip that because it's just so cool just to set the stage of what you're doing, and the fact that it's historically accurate based on actual battles is awesome.
I mean the gameplay isn't super complicated, but I think the detail and the way that they present difficulty is pretty spot on, right? It gives you a sense, a little sense of kind of how those things went down. And I mean, let's face it, if my teenage boys can kind of grasp that, then that's telling, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
But that's what I've been up to for the last couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to getting back to the table a little bit, not having as much travel on the road. And
I'm going out of town for a week. Sorry, guys.
Hey, me too.
hey, me too.
Where are you going?
Utah for a funeral.
Oh,
So not
sorry.
exciting trip, but yeah.
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I will also, Kevin and I are going to Origins with Ben, and then I'll also be in Utah for my brother's Air Force retirement. So excited to go visit some family after Origins.
Yeah, I'm just excited for Origins. I'm not going to go anywhere after, but yeah, that'll be next week. As of this recording, it's next week. So I'm super excited.
But after that, we need to get back to the table more, right?
That's right.
Yes.
So I downloaded and started playing today Tainted Grail Conquest, which is available for free on Xbox Game Pass. I'm excited to get a little further into it. I've heard that it takes place in the same world as Tainted Grail, but the gameplay is a little different, obviously, than what you play in the board game.
You own the board game, right?
I do not. And actually, this brings up a funny story. We were planning our first Cabin Con a few years ago, because it was before COVID. And we create the spreadsheet of what games does everybody bring in? Let's vote on them, right? Tyson added Tainted Grail. He really wanted to
This
get
is
it.
a lie.
do
This
you
is an
own Tainted Grail?
allegation. I did not add this to the spreadsheet at all.
That's not my memory.
I went back in the history of the spreadsheet like 4 years ago and found where
Allegedly.
you added it.
The spreadsheet is spoken. I think you added it. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is Exhibit A.
So we're like voting on it like this last year, like who put Tainted Grail on this? Oh, it was Tyson from the year before.
I did not put that thing on there.
So you don't own it then?
No, I've never owned it. I felt like Tyler put this on the spreadsheet because I
don't own
thought
it.
you owned it as well.
I don't own it.
Maybe you thought I owned it and you wanted
Maybe.
to play it, and so you put it on there.
Maybe.
So anyway, Tainted Grail Conquest. If you've got Xbox Game Pass, download it and try it out. I, played an hour or so of it. I'm excited to play a little more.
Is it single player? Can you play? I have Game Pass.
I believe it is single player.
Just single player.
I didn't really pay attention when I was loading up.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Might as well. Got Game Pass and it's Tainted Grail.
Yeah.
I know Tyson loves it, so.
Yeah, right. He's got a seal of approval on there.
He does.
So anyway, when Mark was talking about digital games, I thought of that today. So one of the games that I played lately, and honestly, I've been in a drought. I hardly have played any games in the last couple months. It's been hard getting games to the table, but I was really excited to get Tabannusi Builders of Ur to the table. This came out in 2021. It's been on my shelf of shame for 4 months. It was published by Board and Dice, and it is in the T-Game series, co-designed, I believe, by David Spada and Daniela Tassini. The artists, and I really like the look and the feel of this game. I think it's pretty, and so it's Builders of Ur.
It's one of those.
It's one of those.
Right.
You can't be wrong if you say every
And
possible
I
word.
was curious about the city, so I looked it up on Wikipedia, and there was like a mosaic that they had, and it was very blue and orangish and reddish. this mosaic that I saw, and I was like, man, that it's like they looked at that and then did the art for it. Themed after that, because that's kind of the look and that it has. But the artists, I think, are in-house at Board and Dice, and I'm going to slaughter these names. I apologize. Zbigniew Umchelter and Alexander Zawada.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, probably. So anyways, this game is in the T-game series, of which my favorite are Teotihuacan and Tekenyu. This game is ranked, as far as complexity, a little bit lower than Tekenyu and a little higher than Teotihuacan. I honestly thought it was the easiest of the three to pick up. So basically, you have 5 districts, and each district has a boat full of colored dice. And there are 3 normal districts where you're doing things like placing water tiles, getting rewards, placing gardens. You're putting down foundation tiles or project tiles that you then build buildings on that you'll score points for later. That's 3 of the districts. One of the other districts is the port district, where you are gaining benefits that you will have for the rest of the game that allow you to do bonus actions and bonus rewards. And it also allows you to collect other rewards. The 5th district is the temple district. And this is where you build up how many points that you're going to get for each of the 3 end game scoring conditions. And I don't know, it's really cool. The thing that I love about, in particular, these 3 games, Teo and Tekenyu and Tabannusi, they all make really good use of dice in interesting ways. So in Teo, the board is a giant rondel. You're never rolling the dice. They are leveling up as you move them around the board, and they are becoming more powerful, and you get more things as your dice become higher in value. In Tekenyu, you're drafting dice around
the obelisk.
The obelisk, which has 6 sections, and each section is a different god and a different action. And depending on what color of the dice and where the obelisk is, as you rotate it, determines which dice are available to you or which ones aren't.
Yeah,
and
where that shadow is. And that's
and,
cool. That's cool.
And not only that, but then the value of the dice determines what you can do for each action. So in Tabannusi, it's a fairly unique way that you use the dice. You have an architect and an assistant meeple. And on your turn, you draft a dice from the location that you're currently at. And based on the value of that dice that you draft from the boat in your current location, that determines which district you move to next. So you move your architect there, you draft the dice, which now becomes a resource, and its value doesn't matter. And you have that resource to use to do some of the actions that you're about to do because your assistant was left behind in the previous area. And in each district, there are 4 different actions that you can do. So you're allowed to do up to 2 actions on your turn, and then you move your assistant to where your architect is. Now, if you took the last dice from the boat or the ship of that district, then you score that district. All the dice come back for it. You re-roll them and put them back out, and then you move on. So when you've scored 5 districts, then it triggers the end game. One of the things that I really like about this game is you plan ahead like crazy, and it's really fun to plan ahead 2 or 3 turns. Like, hey, I'm going to go to the blue area where the blue dice are, and then I'm going to jump over to where the green area. And if those dice are still available, I can do that, and I can chain together a bunch of actions, and it creates some really exciting moments that way. Another thing that I think is cool, I mentioned in the normal districts 1 through 3, you are adding project tiles to the board, and you put a claim marker on them. Well, someone else comes in, they can also add project tiles of the different colored buildings, and if they choose the same color as your project tile is, then they'll add it to yours. And then in that same turn, they could build the buildings and kind of steal your project tiles. But then you get rewards. You go up on the the building tracks that also determine point multipliers for specific building colors throughout the rest of the game. So you can kind of steal buildings from people. I like that. Tyson, you would like that.
I was going to say, before you even described that, I was like, this sounds like this one has a potential for a lot of really interesting interaction between the players, and that really excites me.
Yeah, because you start building a building, or you start putting the project tiles out, and you got to be quick, or someone else is going to. And I assume I've only played in a 2-player game, so I assume in a 3 or 4-player game, those are going to get picked up pretty quick and turned into buildings. But it's not without getting a benefit, which I like. So you can go up on those scoring multiplier tracks, get some additional rewards. I don't know. It's just a really fun game. I would definitely put this in the top 3 for me. Like I said, I only have 1 play of it. But top 3 T-Series games. I think I might like it more than Tekenyu after more plays. I don't think that Tabannusi is better than Teo, but I do think it has the potential to be better than Tekenyu. I think it's a simpler game than Tekenyu. I've just really enjoyed it. Logan, my son, beat me 122-107, and I had a blast. And there was a definite double snap moment where he put together this awesome turn, and I just sat back. Whoa, dude, that was awesome, Logan. There's end game scoring. It's similar to all the T games, I think. You score points each round, and you're scoring points along the way in between the ends of the rounds, and then there's final game scoring, and there's tons of variability. There's different scoring cards, different temple cards. Great game. Really enjoyed it. Solid, crafty member of the T game series.
So what are the other T games that you played then?
So I played Sulkin.
That's right. Yep, I played that one.
I would not put in those with those top 3. I think a lot of people love the spinning wheels and the dials or whatever.
It does look pretty, especially if you get somebody who's painted them. It looks awesome.
Yeah, which I have not painted mine. I have the expansion for that. I haven't played the expansion. I go back and forth as Tabannusi, an actual T game. It wasn't designed by Tassini. It was designed by David Turtzi. If that's a T game, I would still not put that in the top 3. I really enjoyed it, but I've only played once, and it was a complicated game. So,
have you played Trismegistus?
I have not. I have it. That's on my shelf of shame.
That starts with T.
Trismegistus. Yeah. That's I have not played that one. That one, you open it up and it's like it's kind of looks like a
I've heard
giant
that's
mess.
of all of them. That's the one that is the least of them.
Yeah.
So it sounds like themes kind of pasted on right. It seems like a typical game in the T series where it could be any theme basically.
Right.
And the actions don't really make sense to the theme, but it's just all about the mechanics and optimizing. So typical Euro.
But I think it's beautiful, and I think Board and Dice does a good job with their production quality.
They do. All their games are great.
I think of all of them, that's the one that interests me most. I've played Zulkin once. I didn't really get it. I didn't do very well in it. And I've played Teo 10 times, but the same can be said of that one. So I didn't.
Do you know the rules yet?
No, because I've only played it on BGA. And I still don't understand what I'm doing.
I'm trying to think of a game that I've played that many times and still don't know the rules.
I've read the rules multiple times. It's just that the asynchrony in that size of a game on BGA without having the full experience, I think is harder to kind of wrap your head around, because I don't get to see the player interaction in the off turns. And on BGA, I don't tend to go back all that often and read through everybody else's turns. I tend to just continue. So that's why I haven't really grokked that one yet.
Well, I remember playing, we may have mentioned this before, but playing the game at Mark's house the first time. And I had no idea what was going on, and the game was in front of us, and we could ask questions and everything. It's a tough game, even if
I think
if it's in front of you.
If you put it on the table after those 10 BGA plays, if we put it on the table, I think I would be able to understand a lot quicker, and I wouldn't even need very much of a rules overview, but there are a couple things that I was just wait, how does this work, and where does it interact with the other stuff. And that's where I'm.
It does all the upkeep for you. So you're like,
Right.
I don't know what's happening here.
So I feel like we've we've figured out Teo for the most part, right? At this point.
Safe to say we've explored every strategy in that game.
Right. And we still have a little more to explore with some of the expansions. Tekenu, I've played 5 or 6 times. I still grasping at straws to trying to figure out what the best path forward is with that. Logan kills me at that game all the time. I think I've beaten him like once out of the 5 or 6 plays that we've had. I really like that game. I definitely think Tabannusi was the easiest of the 3 to pick up. Just really lots of cool decisions. I'm excited to get it to the table with you guys.
Let's get it played.
Seriously.
So that is Tabannusi, Builders of Ur. All right, so I think we're going to keep it short with what we've been playing lately. That about wraps it up. Let's jump into our feature review, Carnegie, which we're going to kick off with a rules overview or summary from Kevin.
Carnegie is designed by Xavier George, produced by Quind Games, with art done by Ian O'Toole. Carnegie was inspired by the life of Andrew Carnegie, who was born in Scotland in 1835. Andrew Carnegie and his parents emigrated to the United States in 1848. Although he started his career as a telegraphist, his role as one of the major players in the rise of the United States steel industry made him one of the richest men in the world and an icon of the American dream. During the game, you will recruit and manage employees, expand your business, invest in real estate, produce and sell goods, and create transport chains across the United States. You may even work with important personalities of the era. Perhaps you will even become an illustrious benefactor who contributes to the greatness of his country through deeds and generosity. The game takes place over 20 rounds. Players will each have 1 turn per round. On each turn, the active player will choose one of 4 actions, which the other players may follow. The goal of the game is to build the most prestigious company as symbolized by victory points. Each round of the game consists of 4 parts. The first is select a timeline. The first player selects the timeline that they wish to use. Options include human resources, management, construction, or R&D. A gear is then placed on the timeline to the right of the marker. The second part of the round is the event. One of 2 events are possible. The first is the take income event. If the timeline space is illustrated with a mission area on the board, that mission area becomes active. If a player has an employee in the mission in that area, they get income. Income will be received from how far they have developed their transportation in the active area, as well as from projects they have built anywhere on the board. Income is received as goods cubes and bank notes. The second possible event is make a donation. Starting with the first player, all players may choose to make a donation. Donations will give endgame scoring up to 12 victory points for each donation made if the player has satisfied the conditions of the donation. The third step in a round is using departments. The first player may use any of their departments that correspond to the chosen action type. Each department may be used once for each active standing employee in the department. All players start the game with a player board that has a lobby and 5 departments. I'll quickly describe the 4 different types of departments and what they do. The first is human resources. The human resources department allows players to train employees and assign them to different departments. That's just a fancy way of saying that you get to move your employees on your player board to different areas. You get a certain number of movement points based on how many active employees you have in the department you own. Any employee moved will become inactive, laying down, in the department they move to. The second type of department is the management departments. Management departments help generate resources and build new departments to expand the company. The third department type is construction. The construction departments allow players to build housing, commerce, industry, and public infrastructure projects. To build, an employee from that department is sent to a mission area on the board. Then the player spends cubes according to the project type and moves a disk from the corresponding project tab to a space on the board in the same region the employee was moved to. Doing this could get a player transportation income, endgame bonuses for linking major cities, and will unlock additional income for players when employees are returned from missions. The last project type is research and development. The R&D department allows players to improve their transportation networks and develop new housing, commerce, industry, and public infrastructure construction projects. When this action is chosen, each player will get a certain number of study points that can be spent. Study points cost are indicated on the board and project tabs, and will need to be paid in order to advance your marker along a transportation network or to advance a project tab. The final step of a round is activating your employees. To activate your employees, a player must pay the cost indicated under the workstation and stand the player up. If you don't have enough money to activate an employee, that employee will remain inactive for the following round. After 20 rounds, the end of the game is triggered. Players will score points for connections in major cities, active employees, departments they have built during the game, VPs earned on project tabs, construction projects built in cities, and VPs earned from donations. The player with the most points wins. So that's a brief overview of how to play. Let's get back to the table to see what we thought of Carnegie.
Thank you, Kevin, for that rules overview of Carnegie. Let's talk about this game, right? The first thing that we always talk about is the production of this game. Before I introduce that production segment, I want to mention that the game that we've played is a Kickstarter copy. So the production is
Definitely been deluxeified.
So we're going to be looking at it from the Kickstarter copy version, but I've looked through pictures of the retail version as well, and I think all around there's a lot of really great things about the production. Kevin owns this game, so I'm going to throw this over to Kevin to first start talking about the production.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the copy I have is the Kickstarter copy. I got it, I don't know, a week and a half ago. Hey, Tyler, have you gotten yours yet?
I haven't.
Really?
That seems to be a common theme with Kickstarters.
That is a common theme with Kickstarters. I got my Anachrony. No, was it Anachrony 2 months before you got yours, or I don't even remember.
It was Ankh.
Oh, it was Ankh. That's right. That's right.
You and I got
you
our
got
Ankh.
On Mars expansion a week or two before
You haven't got
me.
that one yet?
I did. I got
you
it
did,
a couple days ago. Yeah.
There you go. All right.
Whatever, Kevin.
So the production is amazing. When I opened it up, I was just blown away by how everything was organized. It has game trays in there, and everything has its place. Every player's pieces are all in a separate game trays container. It's just awesome. The Ian O'Toole art is fantastic. Playing it on BGA, I was just, it looks okay. Getting it out on the table looks amazing. I just think the production is really well done.
There's no comparison.
No, there really isn't. It was a completely different experience for me, getting it on the table, seeing the physical pieces.
And that's not to say that the BGA implementation is bad, right?
Absolutely not.
It's not, because it's great. We played it, 10 or 15
At least 10 times.
Yeah,
probably
10 times over the last
maybe.
year and a half.
Yeah, but there's nothing like actually feeling the pieces and playing with the physical board, and it just that tactile nature of the game. It just adds to it. I think it adds a lot to it.
Yeah.
You mentioned the pieces, Kevin, and there's a few pieces in this game that I wanted to highlight. The ones that I'm talking about are the things that go on the action selection board, right? So you've got your action tokens, which are these big, girthy wood piece, beautiful screen printed pieces that they're just amazing. They remind me a little bit, and I know you guys haven't played this, but of Rising Sun and their kind of mahjong tile stuff. These aren't the same material; they're wood, but they're hardy pieces that it's fun to move those around and play with them. But the other thing is that action selection wheel, that cog, which is a giant piece of metal that
Yeah.
You kind of scared me a little bit because the first thing you mentioned when you saw that gear, it's like, man, you could really hurt somebody with this.
Yeah.
you pick that thing up and it's
We
got
were
weight.
playing the game and we heard your dog bark upstairs and your family was out of town, right?
Right,
And
right.
I was like, well, somebody grab a cube and somebody grab the cog and let's defend ourselves, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's beefy.
it's got multiple metal pieces. You've got that cog that is heavy and metal. You've got the start player train token, which is great. And it makes a beautiful sound when you accidentally ding them together that just signifies the start player. I really enjoyed that.
That actually was really funny because I inadvertently dinged like probably 5 or 6 times in the game.
And it would signal the person's.
Say, I did it, and I was like, "Oh no, did I chip the paint?"
Right. This isn't my game. Oh no. Yeah.
But they're high quality.
But then I started doing it on purpose because I don't think you can really. There's nothing you can do to hurt those pieces. No. They're just
well. And then you have the goods pieces, which are the cubes. And we never used the giant goods pieces that are worth like 5 or whatever. But those are huge, like big pieces.
Yeah,
you could knock somebody out with one of those.
Yeah, those were definitely Kickstarter upgrades. They came separate, and they're I got wooden pieces as well. But those are beefy.
But all of the wood pieces too are gorgeous. Like they're all screen printed. Well, most of them have some form of screen printing on them, which are really nice and beautiful. You mentioned Ian O'Toole's art. I kept looking at the board and just looking at random spots of the board that had no actual like gameplay elements to them, and I was like, "Wow, that's beautiful!" Like
There's
just the
detail.
intricate detail, exactly. Which is interesting. We talked about Pipeline earlier a little bit. To compare the Pipeline to Carnegie, Ian O'Toole, this is Ian O'Toole at his top of his game. Like some of the best work he's done.
It's beautiful.
On Mars level type of thing, right?
Raw. I like the new Raw.
The new Raw does look good. It does look
Lisboa. Really like, I mean, this is, premium Ian O'Toole artwork.
So one of the things that I wanted to mention was you have these 4 tracks. They did such a good job. There's slots in your player board. It's a multi-layered player board, not on the top, but on the bottom. And so these tracks can slide in and out as you play the game. Awesome. Super cool. I don't know that I've seen... I can't think of any other examples in games. I'm sure they're there.
I can think is it's like Coloma or La Granja, which have the slots, or Lisboa even has some slots at the top, but they didn't enclose it. Like these slots are completely enclosed. You could pick up the board and those tracks will come with it.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah, I'd never seen that before. When I saw that when I opened the game, I'm like, this is amazing. Like the fact that you thought to do that, because there's other ways you could have implemented that, but the way they did it was just fantastic. I hope that the durability stands up as you're pulling those in and out. I don't know if it's going to kind of mung up the board.
I had wondered that myself.
Yeah, with time, but
you'd have to play it a lot.
You probably would have to play it a lot for it to get there.
You'd get your money's worth out of it before you see that.
Yeah, but I think they executed that really well.
I also thought that it was cool that they included sleeves in your copy for the cards. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the only way you'd sleeve it, right, Tyson?
That's in fact one of the only ways I've sleeved games is when they include them.
It just makes it.
You know what was cool about that sleeving video? So Tyson sent us this video in Discord, and it was, why you don't want a sleeve, right? Because it's a stack of sleeved cards, and they start dealing themselves out to the players.
They slide off the top because the stack was so big and thick because of the sleeves that the cards just fell off.
It auto deals the stack. That's amazing. So anyway, back to Carnegie.
That video backfired for you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Carnegie. The production, I think, like we've mentioned, is just off the charts. It's really good.
Is there anything that we don't like about the production?
That's what I was just trying to think, and I can't think of a single thing about that production that I didn't think was amazing. Like
one thing that it's not a knock against the production, it's probably a knock against how it was packaged. You have these frames that go around the action selection, little tiles, and mine were a little bit munged up, right? That happens in shipment. But other than that, and that's very nitpicky, there's really nothing else in the game that I had a problem with,
Yeah, there's so much to like in the production of this game. Let's talk about then beyond the production, let's talk about the gameplay itself and what we like about this game. So to start us off, I'm going to ask Tyler what he likes about this game, Carnegie.
One of the things I love about this game and the gameplay of it is each game you have a number of different departments that are available to you that do different abilities and have different rewards associated with them. And there are a ton available in this game, especially with the Kickstarter. They added some, I think, and it went above and beyond. It's like, Caverna type level of choices available to you. You narrow that down to, I believe, 16 departments, and you kind of, it's easy to pick a path early on in the game, but based on how the player selection happens and who buys what departments, and they're limited, you might start out the game thinking you're going to go one way, and then you completely change and you have to adjust. And I just love when games do that, where you have to adjust from your perceived initial plan, right? It feels so good when you play a game like that, where you have to adjust and then you're successful at doing it. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. We, like we've said, we probably played this 10, 15 times. Most of those plays were on BGA. So many times I've started out a game going down one path, and then somebody picks the wrong action that you have to now do, and do actions in different orders. And are buying up departments that you were going to take. And, it just changes the game. One other thing, and then we can turn it over to someone else. I love that in this game, it never feels like it's just Kevin's turn or just Mark's turn. Whoever turn it is picks which action you're doing, but then everybody's doing the action after everybody potentially collects rewards from that location that the action corresponds to. It's constantly going back and forth, even when it's quote unquote Mark's turn or Tyson's turn, which I think our group needs a little bit. We play slower sometimes, some of us.
I mean, the name
Agreed.
of the podcast is
the longest turn, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I love that, it never feels like it's just Kevin's turn for 5 minutes, right? They're really quick actions. It moves really well. It doesn't feel like you're playing a solo Euro. There's lots of interaction, which I love. And lots of things that, Tyson might do or Mark might do in a game affects my game. And that's something that I love about it.
Yeah, you mentioned the follow mechanic. I think that's great. There's other games that have done that. I mean, this one's obviously not unique to the follow mechanic. And I think every other game that I've played that has that mechanic has been enjoyable. The Race for the Galaxy, Roll for the Galaxy games do that same thing. And it keeps you engaged the whole time, right? It's like you said, it goes quick. It's not just one person taking their turn. It's everybody gets to follow off of that, which is cool.
It's impacting the decisions you're making directly because somebody made a decision that either you weren't anticipating or you were anticipating. That's what I really like about it, is those choices that you make about which actions I'm going to take. There are certain actions I can take and I say, oh, well, this may not be the most optimal action for me to take right now, but I can see that Kevin is setting himself up to take that action. And if I position myself in a better way, I know that I can take an action that will make it less beneficial for anybody else around the table, and I can still get benefit out of it. When it comes to Kevin's turn next time, he'll take the action that I want, and it'll be great. But that can backfire on you just as easily, because then somebody else can go, oh, I see what you're wanting me to do, and I'm not going to do that. And I think that's really cool.
We have a game going on in BGA right now, and actually a couple of games. I noticed that, so Kevin has a department that I have that it gives you 7 extra research points. And I noticed that Kevin's worker, he didn't have a worker in the department. So if that action was selected, he wouldn't be able to use it. And even though we had just barely done research, I was like, oh, I'm doing it again. And
Jerk.
Yeah, no, but I love that. Like, you're looking at each other's board like, hey, this might not be the most optimal action for me to do right now, but it doesn't really benefit anybody else, or I would love to do this action, but it benefits Tyson or Mark way too much. I got to hold off on that until I can, also benefit from it as much. I don't know. Mark, what do you think? What are some things that you like about this game?
So I think that, you guys have kind of already made that point where it's a game where you have to be present. You can't step away or, disengage, even momentarily. Otherwise the game moves on and you miss something and you could set yourself back. Right. So there've been a couple of times when we played early on where that's happened, and I get really frustrated because I thought I had this great move, and then all of a sudden was the whole scenario had changed. So that was lesson number 1, like pay attention and, be present in what's happening, because it really could, make or break you. And for me, really, where it always starts is it thematically accurate? Like, does it play like, that scenario of building a corporation and running that way, which to me, it absolutely does. I mean, when you look at the setup of the departments, I think that's spot on. They don't always necessarily work, the way that you think they will, which is, fairly realistic. And you can see how luck plays a little bit, into it at times, depending on some of the reactions of some of the other players, which, I mean, to me, the moves that happen in this game and the choices that you can make and the actions that you can take feel like they translate well into building a corporation, running a business, right? All the different elements. And the one that I'll call out in particular is the donations, right? I wouldn't have thought of that as being part of the mix. I understand Carnegie is known for, being a steel baron, right? Construction and all these other things, which are definitely important. But if you neglect the aspect of making donations and having a strategy for those donations, by the time the in-game scoring comes, you get left behind. So including that and bringing in the aspect of his philanthropic endeavors, I thought was a pretty cool touch.
Yeah, that would have been a huge miss if you didn't tie that in, because he donated, was like 90% of his fortune near the end of his life. Like, that's insane. Like,
yeah, the Carnegie libraries, he did a lot of philanthropic work for sure.
Which is interesting because those donations, as the game progresses, they start off as you spend $5, right?
Right.
Which can be a lot of money for what you're doing, but it goes up $5 every time,
right,
unless you get a specific department. So you're giving more and more money away towards the end of the game, and you may not need that money as much, which is interesting. Mark, I hadn't really, I actually thought, I don't think about the theme almost at all as I've played this game, but that's just on me. The game itself, it's interesting, as you mentioned that. I can totally see how the decisions for the mechanics were made from a thematic standpoint and how it ties together. Yeah, I agree.
That donations thing is interesting, because you're giving away more and more of your money as the game goes on. And
right.
That's exactly what he did. So I didn't realize that thematic tie either. That's kind of cool.
But it seems counterintuitive, right? Like, he's known for being, a billionaire, right? Amassing great wealth. And so you think, okay, well, naturally, I want to do the same thing. I want to build this company. It's going to make a ton of money. And I'm going to do that by investing in, these other tracks, right? But if you neglect that aspect, right, the donations, that's your multipliers. I mean, it really can screw you up at the end if you don't.
So another thing that I really like about this, and it's been mentioned a little bit, but I want to talk about it a little bit more in depth, is the player interaction. Tyler mentioned player interaction and how this game is not your dry solitaire Euro, which I like a lot of the time, but this game is, and we've already mentioned it once in this podcast, heavy with interaction, which is something that I really, really enjoy in a game. And the interaction in this game is so interesting to me because typically I don't care to watch other people's boards all that much, but in this game, it's almost imperative that you have to look at other people's boards to see where they're going. Because if you don't see what workers they have laid down or stood up, then you won't be able to anticipate what is about to come forward. And it plays so heavily into your plan. I love the action selection board. It shows you outright at the start of the game, and this is one of those things in the game that has a variable setup. So your action selection is not always going to go the same way every time. Every game is going to come out differently, and the types of places that are going to gain income are going to be different from game to game. So you have to be paying attention to that, but you can see clearly from the first turn what places people are probably going to go after based off of that board. And so you start forming your strategy right there at the start of the game to think, oh, okay, I'm going to go and select these options, purchase these departments, or go down this train of strategy so that I can go ahead and make sure that I'm maximizing what I'm getting off of other people's turns. And I love how intricate that is. However, conversely, I played with a friend of mine, Steve, a couple of times, and in our second game of it, he mentioned to me, he goes, "This is interesting. This game can be really cutthroat. Like you can do things that are just mean. Like you can totally just cut somebody off from something." And I played a game with on BGA with somebody I don't know, just a stranger. And he saw what my strategy was going to be because I had purchased a department that gave me bonuses for having links at the end of the game. So I wanted to link the whole continent. And his first construction action, which allows you to put discs on the board, he put discs in the 2 possible locations that you could get access to San Francisco in this game. And immediately he saw that I had reserved that department, and he took those slots, which weren't beneficial slots to him at the time, but he knew by the end of the game it would be really beneficial, and he totally destroyed me in by the end of that game. So it can be very mean, but I think that's provides a lot of interesting strategies and takes in this game.
Well, and to me, that's the thematic piece, right? I mean, that's how it's like in business, in the business world. Absolutely. Right. I mean, that's kind of how it goes. You're always looking for who's doing what, where are my competitors, and
trying
so
to get a leg up on them.
Absolutely. So it feels like that. And that's why I thought they did a really good job of kind of simulating that through the gameplay. That realism, I really like.
Yeah, I agree with you on the variability, and by far my favorite part of the game is that action selection track. And you only play with 4 of those tiles at the same time. They're double-sided, and there's a stack of them that you can switch in and out. No game's going to be the same as far as what comes up next, right? So every game's going to be a little bit different. One thing I wanted to mention was the transportation tracks. I think those are super interesting, and where you advance along those transportation tracks is where you're going to get income. So you can set yourself up to get more people, more employees. You can set yourself up to get more cubes, more money. And it gives you the ability to set up kind of a super turn, right? You can load up employees, send them on missions to certain parts of the board, and just get a massive amount of money or cubes. It's going to, further your strategy or what you want to do in the game. So having those big turns and planning ahead for them, I think, is kind of a fun aspect of the game.
Well, you mentioned that sending your employees out. At first, the first game we played together, I didn't understand the importance of getting departments that sent my employees out. At first, I was like, oh, I just want the departments that have passive abilities that keep my workers there.
That are quote unquote free, right?
Right.
Sure.
That I'm not paying money to employ my employees. That's great. But quickly it became apparent that those transportation tracks are vital to your success, and you have to be able to send your employees out and spend money on your employees, and that makes money important. All the resources in this game are tight. Like, you are keeping a close eye on what you can do, because you got to make sure that, when a donation turn comes up, I have to have enough money to make a donation, because like Mark said, those are imperative to end game scoring multipliers. But not only that, but I need that money so that I can stand up the right workers. And I also need goods, but goods can be transferred to $1, so I can exchange my goods for money, but I may need goods to be able to construct buildings and to perform research. And it's really interesting to me, all the decisions you have to make on how these goods and resources all work together.
So I was thinking about this too, and I'll throw this question out for you guys because I'd love to get your opinion. And I guess dissimilar to other games, there's 20 rounds, which feels like there's a lot that could happen in those 20 rounds, especially as you move to the various tracks. The question that I have is, what impact do you think it would have if there were less rounds, 15, for instance, or if there were more? Like, do you think this would, and the reason I ask this, and maybe it's a little selfish that I do this, is because in most of the games that I've played, I felt like I haven't been fast enough to establish my strategy where by the time the last round rolls out, I haven't made that power move that I needed to make and I ran out of time. But I don't know that, adding extra rounds would give me the chance to do that, or if it would just, that's a question I asked for you guys. I don't know if you thought about that, but I was thinking about that during one of our last plays.
No, that's a good question. And I think that for me, regardless of what the rounds are, however many there are, it's going to be tight. It comes back to those resources because I want to do lots of things. And it also depends on that interaction of what are other people doing. And if I can see that on my turn, I need to do certain things. If I get derailed from what my strategy is because Tyler chooses to do an action that I hadn't anticipated, and I'm like, oh, well, I might as well spend this money or these resource cubes, right, on something, then it may detract from my other strategy. So I think that for me, regardless of what the amount of turns are, it all comes down to the decisions I'm making. Am I maintaining to the strategy that I'm planning on, or am I being dragged multiple different ways because other players are choosing options that I hadn't anticipated? And am I wasting some of the resources on that and thereby diversifying myself a little too much?
Yeah, I don't think I've felt that more actions are needed.
No.
And there are some games where they overstay their welcome.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
Like
100%.
like Terraforming Mars. I love the game, but it just goes on. And at the end of the game, you have like 800 cards in front of you, right? Or it just seems like you can do everything you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I like the tension that comes along with games where, you're just getting there and am I going to be able to do it? And then, and then you, like to your point, Tyler, sometimes you do and it's awesome. Sometimes you don't. And you're like, okay, what could I have done better in that game? So I could have done what I wanted to do. Right. So I like that tension.
Well, there's always
like that.
There's always that struggle of trying to figure out, is my strategy singular or do I have multiple ways? Because, in a game like this, there's so many different things that you can do, right? I mean, the options are unlimited. You can do any number of things as long as you have the resources to do those, right? And so what I haven't been able to successfully figure out yet or crack the code on is, is it better to diversify and have a little bit, spread it, or, for instance, focus exclusively on the transportation track, for instance, or, maximizing in a single region where I can make my donations accelerate, the projects that I've got there. With more turns, it would allow you to do that. But having, the 20 rounds kind of forces you to make that decision and say, my time is a finite resource. My money and my people are finite. So I got to make a choice here, and you can't do it all. I mean, if you can figure out a way to do it all, you would really dominate this game. But to me, I feel like you have to be very selective, and it forces that decision to where, it's it makes you or breaks you. You're limited, so you got to make the most of your moves. And there's definitely a couple of games that we've played where I felt like I made a move that was not great, and it took probably 3 more rounds to recover from that. And the sense was that, and this goes back to being present, right? Like if you're not aware and you make a misstep, you could easily get left behind.
That happened in the last game we played. I dug myself in the hole with cubes. I didn't have cubes for a number of rounds. I missed out on all these actions that Kevin and Tyson were just benefiting from like crazy. And I knew I wasn't going to win. I mean, and I lost by 20 points or so. And that was the first time that I ever let myself fall into that trap of not having the resources I needed at the right times or to cover any number of possibilities that might come up.
Well, it also feels like it's blood in the water too, right? Because you notice when that happens, when there's that one person, believe me, I've been that guy who can't make the play or who gets locked out or whatever, the other people realize it and they're like, man, we're
taking this action because you get nothing and you like it.
Yeah,
right. Hate capitalism. We are destroying this guy and he is done, right? We're taking over his territory. And that's happening. It's such a helpless feeling, but I mean, kudos to the creation of the game for being able to represent that. I mean,
I think that's
It's really cool.
That's maybe a perfect segue into some of the things that we may not like about this game, or things that we don't have as much that may give us a negative feeling in this game, right? So I've noticed that. I said specifically I like that interaction, but there have been specific times where in this game I've played a move and I watch and see the next action they took specifically because they saw the opportunity for me to have nothing I could do. And that turn, even though it's not like my quote unquote turn, somebody else's turn, and I miss the opportunity to do something on their turn, it can feel a little bit negative. Has anybody else had that experience? I mean, Mark, you kind of just mentioned that.
I absolutely have been on the losing end of that multiple times. In fact, it was probably the second time we played. I couldn't figure out because I wasn't, we played it on BGA and I had stepped away or something, and I came back and I realized, I couldn't even figure out how I got into the position that I was in. And I basically was, all right, well, I'm toast, right? And my lesson from that was pay attention, stupid. Don't let this happen again. Look at what the other guys are doing. And fortunately, I've kind of been able to minimize that. Not completely, but I've done better. The one little question that I have, or the one little issue that I have, is that I never get a sense of if I'm doing well. I think it's very easy to tell during the gameplay when you're doing terrible because you're locked out. You're like, I'm not going to be able to recover from this. Yeah. But it's hard to get a sense of how am I doing? Like, you get to the end and you do the in-game scoring and you're like, this. I've always been surprised at the turnout. I've never had a sense of, yep, this is exactly how I thought it was going to go. It's always, maybe a few more plays and I'll get a better handle on that. But to me, I don't know if I hate that or not. It's kind of a surprise at the end. Maybe you guys have a different opinion, but I remember playing that and thinking, I have no idea how well I'm doing.
I think it's dependent on the game for me, because there have been times that I'm like, the first game I played with Kevin and Tyler, I remember thinking, I have no idea where this is going to end up. But that was part of not knowing exactly what the end game scoring conditions were totally. Like, I forgot, for example, that at the end of the game, every standing employee you have in one of your departments is a point. And I didn't do like any of that. And it was a complete surprise to me. And when I saw Kevin get a bunch of points off of that, I was like, oh.
I didn't know that was a rule.
It was, and it was explained clearly to start the game.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying how many times do we play on BGA, and I never looked to see those points being awarded, right?
Yeah,
like it was funny. There were a couple of rules from that first play on the table that was like, oh, really? That's a rule?
Yeah, this is how the game works?
Yeah.
Well, I've only played it 10 times.
Yeah,
that's the downside of the digital version.
Hey, you know what? 95%. I'm doing a lot better than his What would you say your percentage of Teo is?
0%. I've never won a game. I think I've
no, but understanding it.
Oh, yeah. I'd say I'm probably at 70, 75%.
Okay, you understand more.
I'm having a really hard time thinking of stuff that I dislike. Even that game where I got pigeonholed into not being able to really do anything and then I didn't connect my links. I don't think that's a fault of the game. And I didn't have any... I wasn't upset. Like, it just happened and I knew I wasn't going to recover from it. And you know what? That's fine. I didn't feel like that was a negative against the game.
I have something that's not necessarily a negative, but more of be aware of it. It's a lot to take in, I think, for your first play, right? With all of the different departments to keep track of, the action selection, you're sending guys out on missions. It's a pretty heavy game, right? So it's just something to keep in mind as you're getting into it. Don't throw in all the content at once, right? Yeah. Don't have all the offices available or the departments available. We did that. There's a variant you can play on BGA that I think we played with one time, and I'm like, holy cow, there are so many.
Overwhelming.
It was overwhelming, right? So having 16 available, I think, is overwhelming enough the first time you play. So just something to be aware of as you get into it. It's going to be a lot to take in your first game or two.
Well, and to that point, I mean, it's for me. I know it. I struggle trying to remember which department does what exactly, right? Like having a cheat sheet is super critical because as you build this out and you're trying to remember, okay, now what exactly does this do? And the first couple of times we played, I mean, I played super slow because I had to go back and try and remember all these departments that I've built. Now, which exactly were they? I mean, I remember they were management or they were research and development, but what is the order that I needed to take the actions for that? Because I couldn't remember which was which. And once I got that straightened out, it helped.
I do think that's one thing that is better on BGA is you can just hover the mouse over and it tells you what the department does.
Yep.
Whereas, and it's not that the iconography is bad because it's not. I think they did a really good job.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think the iconography is great.
And company, but
There's just a few of those departments that can be like, okay, what is this saying? And it's not an issue of the iconography. And as soon as you read it, it makes sense.
Right.
But the fact that there's so many different departments that could come out.
yes, that's a little.
Being able to understand them all is going to be impossible, especially if you haven't played with one or two before. And so that kind of segues into a little nitpick of mine, and it's not a dislike. It's more of a question for me in terms of longevity of this game. I think this game does a good job of having the appearance of variability, but I'm not sure how truly variable it is because essentially I'm doing the same thing every game I've played. Yeah, the departments will change. Yes, the action selection grid or whatever that's called can have a bunch of variety. And yes, you can get different discs blocking off certain donations or areas on the map. So there's a lot that could happen in there. But fundamentally, does that change the gameplay and the strategies I'm going to employ? And ultimately, my core player board, I'm going to be playing the same construction management, HR, etc. I'm going to do the same things. And the departments that I'm buying, new departments, are going to supplement my strategy, but I can choose that. The same strategies will be employed from game to game. And over time, even in the I think I've played 5 games at this point. The 5 games I've played, I've seen, I could focus on the same types of things from game to game and kind of rely on it. The change really for me in the game is not in what components are new or what pieces are different, but the change is always going to be between the players at the table, I think, and how are they going to implement those strategies? And that's going to add, for me, more variability, honestly, than the variable component setups.
Well, then it has variability, right?
I agree, but I'm saying that
you posed the question, right?
And then you answered your own question saying it's a variable.
I did. You're right. But I don't think it's in the components. So my nitpick is that it doesn't really change.
Yeah, I think
if you have the same exact components from game to game, you'd still have variability in the interactions of what players are going to choose. But
I think there's quite a bit of variability in departments that we haven't even touched yet. Right. I think at least in the Kickstarter version, I don't know about if the retail version comes with all that extra stuff. Hopefully it's available if it's not at some point, but you have that. You have the construction tabs themselves are double-sided. I don't know. In the games have you played, have you flipped those
them,
over
yeah,
a little bit?
it.
Yeah. And I think you get to the end of one of those tracks and I don't know if I've ever gotten to the end of one of those tracks.
I don't think I have.
I think I have once, but not intentionally, just trying to see, hey, what does this do? And I can't even remember the impact that it had.
Yeah, on one of the sides, you flip it over and it increases your donations, each donation by 3 points, I think, is the bonus that you get, which is kind of cool. I think I get your point.
I'm not saying there isn't variability, but it's not
how much longevity is your
substantive.
I
question?
think there's enough there that this game has staying power and that it will be worth going back to. I mean, we've played this a lot. I still feel like I'm figuring out things. And I feel like there are optimal strategies to try and to employ with each type of group of buildings, especially as they change over time, which ones are out there for each department type, right?
So I think that's a good point. For me, I guess the real question I'm asking is, are your strategies changing based off of the departments and things like that, or are your strategies changing based off of what players are doing with those. Does that make sense?
I think it's a combination of both. And I also think, hey, last time I went heavy on research. I'm not going to go that route this time. I want to try something new. And there's a whole nother track to go down.
Well, and that's exactly it. And
I think
as
it's
a
a
player, you're
combination of
choosing
all
to
of
do
them.
something different. But
Right. I don't feel like when we play Praga, right? I feel like I'm locked in to having to at least go a good portion down the King's Road, right? I don't feel like that in Carnegie at all. I think you benefit quite a bit from research, but I feel like you could easily win this game without doing a lot of research.
Well, and the thing about the departments too is that not all departments are created equal. Your strategy is which am I going to pick, right? Because they will take you down different paths, and maybe it doesn't make as much sense to build out your entire tableau with, all the departments that you can have. I mean, it's an interesting wrinkle that the HR limits the number of movements that you can make, orthogonally, right? And I kind of chuckle when I think of HR, right? Like they should be enabling me, and they're saying I can only go this way. Yeah, absolutely. Like this is as real as it gets. They're prohibiting me from advancing my career. It's a funny little move, but the variety of the departments are such that you have to use them, but you don't use the same ones, right? You can pick different, and even how you arrange them. Like I thought that having a second lobby.
Yeah, I love that.
When I first saw that, I was like, this feels like a throwaway. Like, what good is that? And then you realize that you can stash workers and have access to, the fast track, right? Oh, this guy's going to be a little closer, right? Yeah, I thought that was really, really cool.
Another thematic tie I didn't even think about. That's awesome.
We need to bring Mark on as our thematic expert.
Yeah. That's right.
Unfortunately,
it's a full-time position that pays nothing.
This one hits close to home, though, right?
I feel like sometimes I've been on the opposite side of HR policy, right? So when I read this, when I play, Carnegie, and I realize, well, I need to be over here, but I can't. Why? Well, because of this arbitrary rule. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, this feels pretty real. Once again, kudos to these guys.
That is funny because I have written down, I don't feel the theme comes through, right? That's one of my things that I dislike. That's a me issue.
Right.
That's not a game issue,
Because
right?
it's proliferated throughout, apparently.
I just didn't see it, right?
Well, I'm so glad I could come and expose myself as a walking HR violation, so that you guys can understand how beautiful that piece of the game is.
Yeah, but beautifully designed, really.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If the question really is, things you dislike, right? To me, it always starts with, would I play it again, right? And usually the first question or what determines whether or not I enjoy a game is there enough variability to where it doesn't just funnel you into a singular route to, victory, right? And if it does, chances are I'm not going to enjoy that game. I probably wouldn't pick it up amidst others. And, based on the times that we played, I still don't feel anywhere close to that. I think that each game feels a little bit different. Each game has different opportunities where I pick up some other little nuance that I didn't know previously. And so I think the staying power is there. So I honestly can't say that there's too much that I dislike about this game other than the fact that I wish I was better at it. I know what I want to do, but I've always not been able to quite get it going quick enough. And, but it's always been fun to play.
We recently played Pulsar 2849, and I think that game is amazing at multiple points in the game, creating this anticipation of, am I going to be able to do what I want to next? Is somebody going to block me there? Is somebody going to draft the dice that I want? I think that for me, this is a small nitpick, I don't think that Carnegie necessarily creates huge moments of anticipation like that, like a Pulsar does. Either at the end of the game or round to round, there is a little bit. And I'm not saying it's not there, but it's not like overwhelming. Like, oh, I'm going to puke here in a second from the anxiety of what's about to happen in this game. Right? I don't have that. Not that I want to puke while I'm playing games, but I like when games come down to a specific moment where you're just kind of like, am I going to be able to do this? This is going to be amazing. And internally you're going crazy, and externally you're trying to keep a poker face. I don't feel like Carnegie necessarily creates some of those intense moments.
But let me ask you this. If you had the ability to see the number of points that you would get based on that move, like if there was a running scoreboard, like for Teo, for instance, right? When you stack and you're like, okay, I'm going to make this move and I'm going to cash in like 40 points based on, like, it feels really good. If there was a way to simulate that in Carnegie, do you think you would feel the same way? Like that one move that oh man, this thing is going to be worth 50 points to me and I'm going to blow the... Because it's all in the dark.
Your point track in Carnegie, there is a point track, but I think the most points I've seen scored in a game is like 20, 22 points or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you're getting 100 points plus at end game scoring. So,
but it's always dissociated from the move a little bit. Is
right?
My sense.
Maybe, but I'm not sure.
So maybe I'll ask it a different way. Like at the end of each game, are you able to go back and say, this was the defining move that made the difference?
In the last game that I lost badly, yes, I could easily pick that out.
For worse, but for better.
There's been a couple games where, those moments were easy to pick out. But generally, no, I don't think that. Yep. I think it's all kind of meshed together, right? And
I get the feeling that it's kind of meshed together. You're doing a lot of little good things throughout the game to get the end result. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Pulsar. It's almost an unfair comparison in my mind because I like Pulsar so much, right? But it's a level above most games in my collection. But Pulsar does such a good job at creating those moments. And to your point, there are instances in that game where you can look back and say, I did that move. And because I did that move, that's why I got the victory, right?
Right.
I did a gate run in Pulsar that got me just an insane amount of points. It was one move. I was planning it for the whole game.
Yeah, that
and it was that anticipation of, and that setup for so many turns before that was just so exciting in that game. And I kind of agree with you, Tyler, that I don't know if Carnegie creates those moments and that level of excitement. Not saying it's a bad game at all. It's just not quite to the level of a Pulsar,
which I brought up because we've recently played, and otherwise I don't know that I would have thought of that.
But so I think that for me, like, it's an interesting comparison. As you've been mentioning this, I've been thinking that I think that the issue is the same, different sides of the same coin, essentially, right? In Pulsar, the anticipation comes from having missed opportunities. You're waiting for that setup. You've set something up and the anticipation comes from that front end. I'm waiting for this opportunity to be able to do something, but if I don't get it, I'm going to miss that opportunity. On the other side, Carnegie, I think, is more of a wasted opportunities things, because you're not anticipating that this thing is going to fall in a certain place. Instead, you know that you can make whatever happens. It's just, when are you playing it? It's a wasted opportunity if you don't do it. If Kevin chooses to play an action where I wasn't set up for, I just lose and waste my opportunity to do it, as opposed to I haven't set something like it's the other way. So like it's this missed versus wasted opportunity difference to me. So the anticipation in Carnegie is not like front loaded. So I think that wraps up everything that we have to really say about this game in terms of the dislikes. Let's move on to our final thoughts with this game. And Mark, why don't you start us off? The first time appearance means first time experience to be able to tell us your final thoughts about Carnegie.
Happy to. So the way I would rank this game on a scale of 1 to 5 is I would give it a 4 because I enjoy the gameplay. I think it's well done. I think it presents a very good challenge. There's a couple little things that I don't love, but that's mostly related to my personal experience playing it and still trying to, be more successful at it. But I would recommend it out there. I would put it amongst other games that I really enjoy. I wouldn't put it at the top of my list where, given other options, this is the game that I would go to every time. But it definitely is one that I enjoy. I recommend. I think it's well done, and check it out.
So I absolutely think this game has staying power. I really enjoy it. The Euro field is a crowded field. And this, I think for a new Euro game to stand out, it needs good production. It needs some interactivity between players and not just feel like a solo experience, at least for me personally. Art and theme are huge. And, Eno O'Toole, I think, knocked it out of the park with the art design. I think the production is amazing on this game. I think it stands out. And I think it has staying power. The thing I love the most about this game, it never feels like it's just one person's turn for an extended amount of time. I love that there's tons of interactivity between players and looking to, at Kevin's board or Mark's board or Tyson's board to decide, hey, how can I eke out a victory here by doing something less optimal for them and that's more optimal for me. I love that when someone selects an action, everybody gets to do that action and everybody gets to pull back workers and gain bonuses and benefits if they have them out on the board from that action. It never feels like it's just one person's turn. And I love that about this game. I feel like I'm still exploring this game after even the number of plays that we've had, still trying to find the optimal path and I don't think there is one. And I think that's something that I love about it as well is you can win a number of different ways. And not only that, but because of the different departments and the number of different departments that there is an infinite amount of combinations for you to consider and to play down or to play towards. And so I don't really have anything negative to say about this game. I nitpicked, it doesn't create these overly exciting on the edge of my seat moments. It's a high 4 for me. But I don't have anything negative to say about it. I love this game. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy playing it. I think it has staying power. I don't know. It's not quite a 5. And maybe it will be if we talk about it again. Yeah, it's a high 4 for me.
I've thought a lot of the things that you said, Tyler, I echo. I've thought about where this lands in the sea of Euros because there's so many Euros, so many great games, so many not so great games. Like, where does this one fall, right? And I keep coming back to, well, it's probably top third, something in that range, which makes it a great game. I don't think it's top tier Euro in my mind, but it does so many things great, right? I love the variability in it. The action selection board and how you can vary that up, the different, even the tabs where the construction tabs you can flip over that just add a little wrinkle to it. The different, they're not offices. What are they called?
Departments.
The different departments. I always call them offices. The different departments and how you can mix and match and your strategies can be different every game. Like you mentioned, I don't think there's one strategy that's going to be dominant. You can switch up what you're doing every time. It's just a lot of fun and it's a lot of fun to explore. I think where this one falls for me, it's a solid 4. It didn't quite reach the 5, but it's a 4. It's a game that I would gladly play at any time. It's a game that I own and I'm glad I own. And I think it's something that can get to the table. It can get into the rotation, right? I'm glad it's on BGA, but I think having the physical version is a different experience. And it's something I think will get on my table in the future. So, yep, solid 4 for me.
So I think we all feel very similar across the board, and I'm just going to outright say that I also think it's a 4 out of 5 for me for all the reasons that have been said, and echoing back what Tyler was saying, that I don't have a good reason why it's not a 5, but it doesn't feel like a 5 to me. It doesn't feel like my favorite of all games, right? It feels like a great game. There are some stuff in it that I think is tremendous. I really, really, really like the action selection stuff and the player interaction that creates. That action board is, I think, really great. And if you only play this on Board Game Arena, you do not get the feel, I don't think, that you get out of that action selection component that you get on the actual table. The actual table, you get to see how things are working. You get to physically, it's tactile, but not only that, I can see better how that is correlating with everybody else's stuff. And this game is played best on the table. Like I love it on Board Game Arena. I'm so glad it's on Board Game Arena. But if I had my option to play this, I'd play it on the table anytime I could. If somebody suggests to play it, I want to play it. But again, it's not quite in that threshold of this is one of my favorite games of all time. It's close, but it's not there yet. So overall, it sounds like we're all in agreement that this is a 4 out of a 5 game. It's a great game. If you get a chance to play this, you really ought to play that. So now that we're done with our review of Carnegie, let's move into something else that excites us, as Carnegie does excite us. Let's talk about the things that are exciting us right now. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you that's really exciting?
Origins. Yeah. First time going. We've talked about it before. It's Ben, Tyler, and I are going to head off and spend a week playing games, which is going to be amazing. We went through the registration. We registered for some events. Hopefully we're not
too many.
Hopefully we didn't register for too many, which I don't think we did. One of those things we registered for, though, was Big Power Grid, which I'm super excited to play. It's played, I think, on a board that's 5 feet by 6 feet. It's got the houses you put down that actually light up. That sounds pretty cool, right? It seems like one of those con games it's just going to be a fun experience to play. So we were able to all get in the same game, and I'm looking forward to it. I love Power Grid. I love Tiny Power Grid. Like I'm gonna love Big Power.
Now we get to play God mode Power Grid, like looking down on the earth, like
foreseeing from your tower on high.
Yeah. It's gonna be. Hopefully, it's gonna be an epic experience. So, looking forward to that, and as well as all of the other experiences that we'll have there. So
I'm sad that I won't be able to attend Origins with you guys. I've had the opportunity to go to Origin one other time, and I had a blast. And there's so many good things to go to. So I'm excited that you guys get that opportunity. But I will miss out. So you'll have to take lots of pictures so that we can post them on our Instagram feed as well, and make sure that people can enjoy, like me, who aren't attending, can see how that's going.
We will document thoroughly.
And those who are going to Origins, you can keep an eye out for Kevin, Tyler, and Ben with the longest turn shirts that they'll be wearing.
That's right. We're going to be in full sloth mode.
Right.
I hope you'll be moving faster, because you may not get the games that you're hoping to get. You're too slow.
Honestly, like there isn't any games that I'm like, I gotta be the first through the door to get to this booth to get this game. There isn't really anything like that for me. Is there for you, Kevin?
No, there isn't. I don't know if that's the focus of this con, though. I think that's more Gen Con,
right?
Where there's new releases that people are, running from the doors to get.
And I think there'll be some games that are available for the first time to us, but
yeah, I mean,
I did look at a few the Origins preview list, and there's several things so I'm going to put together a list for you guys of things that if I were there, these are some of the things that I would check out. And if you guys have time, go check out these demos and things like that. Because I think there's a few things in there that may be worth looking at that you may not agree with me on.
So they're backstabby or
no, not necessarily, but
social deduction.
I don't think
they're totally backstabby.
Social deduction there.
I do it.
I have wanted to see Blood on the Clock Tower, so if you see that one, go check that one out.
And if you do see us, we may have some swag, right? In the form of a sticker, but not. I didn't say it was cool swag, but hey, we may give you a sticker. So there you go.
But it is cool swag.
Okay,
the stickers are awesome.
It is. The stickers are awesome.
Let's just face it. The world needs more sloths. So we're just doing our part.
We're trying to flood the world with sloths.
That's right.
There you go.
What about you, Tyler? What's exciting you right now, aside from Origins?
So I got an email this week from Juma Al-Juju, and I don't know if that's how he pronounces his name, and Karma Games that I was super excited about. Juma did one of my favorite games, Clans of Caledonia. And I absolutely love that game. That's a game, Mark, you played that from the very beginning with Kevin and I. Kevin had the first copy, and we've played a ton out of that game, both on table and on BGA. So when I got this email, I was super excited, and it was announcing another game that Karma Games is doing. And I believe this is not the second game. I think the second game was in German only so far, but this is Thiefdom. And it is I think it's designed by Simon Schneider. Juma has his name on the cover as well. It may be co-designed. It also has the Miko's art, which has done games like Raiders of the North Sea. He's got a very unique look to his art, and he does an awesome job. So this game, just the fact that it's from Karma, that Juma is involved. I loved Clans of Caledonia. It's a pick up and deliver game where you represent a thief guild in a city, and you're moving your thieves around, avoiding other people, controlling other non-player people, and using tools to become the best thieving guild, right? The pick up and deliver games aren't necessarily my favorite, but I am just excited about it. It looks pretty. There's only a couple pictures of it up on BGG. I think the basic gameplay of it is that you simultaneously, everyone determines the order of movement of each of your thieves the order that you're going to move each of your thieves in that round. And then you reveal that and you move your thieves and you're moving the guards around and you're trying to avoid the guards and not get caught. There's cleanup and points being awarded. The game has a modular board. I'm just excited to explore this. I saw today that I think Juma said that on BGG, it's most likely going to be on GameFound at the end of this year. So I'm excited. It looks pretty, looks cool. Like I said, pick 'em deliver, not my favorite, but because he's involved with it after playing Clans of Caledonia, I'm most likely going to be all in on this game.
It looks pretty.
It does, right?
I just pulled up a picture of it. It looks awesome.
The cover art for the box is awesome, and there's one picture of the board. And
I'm looking at the board now, and it looks interesting. When you said Juma, I'm like, Clans expansion? That'd be. That I'm disappointed in this one, but I really want a Clans expansion.
Yeah, he's been talking about that for a while. He's pretty active, or has been active over time in the BGG forums for Clans expansion. Hopefully that's still coming down. I haven't seen anything official, but I would love to have an expansion for Clans.
I would love that. Yeah, like you mentioned, we played that a lot. That would get it to the table again if there's an expansion. Even more, which would be great.
One thing I do hope with this game, I hope it comes in a normal size. Clans of Caledonia, you feel like you're playing a little bit of a mini game, right?
I hope it comes in a bag like Love Letter. That'd be amazing, right? That should be
the worst.
That should be a trend.
Yeah.
Right?
I want a full-size board game that's in a bag like that.
I like big boards. I want a table hog with this thing.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I have a big board game table. That's pretty common in our hobby to have a big giant board game table. I want this thing to fill it up.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree.
Well, the thing that I'm excited about is I backed a Kickstarter, which I don't often back Kickstarters. I do occasionally, but it usually has to be something that I'm particularly interested in. And this one is Arcs from Leader Games, known for Root and Oath and Vast. I haven't owned a Leader Game main box since Vast. I have Fort, but I haven't had one of their big games since Vast. I've played Oath and I've played Root, but for whatever reason, those games didn't kind of draw me in. But what Arcs is it's a fast-playing, tense science fiction game. Basically, it's a 4X game, and the real thing that's interesting to me about this game is that it has a trick-taking action selection component to it. So you're playing your cards when whoever's turn it is going to play a card. And when they play a card, it has a suit and it has a value on it. that suit is essentially the type of action they're doing. So you can construct things, you can move, you can do other like actions like aggression actions and things like that. And you'll, depending on what suit you're doing. And you can play the card, which sets the suit for everybody, and other players can then play a follow-up card to try and take the trick, essentially, meaning it's how you determine player order, which seems really fascinating to me, because if you really want it, you want to play a high card of a matching suit so that you can take that trick, so you can take the next turn. And you'll also get to do a follow action of whatever that is. So we were just talking about Carnegie and how everybody are taking actions. I love that type of interaction. And this one sounds like it has some really interesting takes on that. The trick taking, I've heard a lot of people complain about it as, that's weird. Why would you want a full board game that's like centralized around trick taking? And it's just a portion of it, because this is a full 4X game and there's a lot that is going on. But it was enough to intrigue me that I wanted to see more about what this game was. So I backed it. Currently, I've only backed it at the base level. I've watched through some plays, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going for everything, because it comes with a campaign. I'm just concerned with our group. We don't play campaigns enough. So do I want to go for that? And then like you can go and get the whole minis stuff.
You have to do that.
Yeah,
you
if
got,
you're
I mean,
going in, you got to do it.
otherwise, just wait for
if
retail.
you
then.
guys are going in, you have to do that, because you guys are junkies
if you
and
don't-
addicts.
If you don't get the Kickstarter exclusive,
Yeah, why-
then just
get
wait
it
for
retail.
retail.
Because I can always in the pledge manager decide. That's the great thing about a Kickstarter.
Well, yes.
Is I don't have to make that decision yet. And this has Tabletop Simulator, so I'm waiting. Will Brown, the Hungry Gamer, my buddy, he's played it. He's reviewed it, and he was gonna maybe teach me the game. So I'm kind of holding out for that to see where that is.
So I think I saw somewhere how the game is set up. It lends well for the possibility of expansions. And when I saw that, I've been a little trigger happy with my crowdfunding lately. So I kind of was like, you know what? If they're going to do expansions potentially in the future, I'm gonna pass this time around.
And then when they do another Kickstarter, if you love it, then you can pick it up then, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah. See,
So I can play Tyson's copy.
yeah, exactly.
His deluxeified
His
version,
del-
because
yeah,
he's
right?
going to
I
play to
haven't-
the highest level.
So here's the thing. It depends on what you guys find at Origins, because if you find some of the stuff that I really want at Origins, I'm probably going to wait to
Sorry,
go on.
Tyson. They didn't have any of those at their booth.
Now, as far as arcs goes, I feel confident that since they're sparsing or partitioning this out based off of the base game and the campaign, and then the basically it looks like an upgrade pack. I feel confident with Leader Games putting out, like, it's not going to be terribly difficult to upgrade if I want to. Well, let me first mention that there's at the recording of this podcast, it's 9 days to go on this Kickstarter. I'm not sure that will matter when this releases, with the fact that Tyler and Kevin and Ben are all going to Origin. So it may not.
And I'm working this rest of this weekend at work. So yeah, I don't know how quickly I'm going to get this episode out. But Mark, is there anything you're excited about?
I am super excited to leech off of your experiences at Origin. Actually, I'm on the road next week, and so I'm not able to join you, but looking very forward to seeing you guys come back with all new ideas, getting back at the table finally. And
Is next week your Alaska trip?
that's it.
Awesome.
Next week.
That's something to be excited
I
about.
kind of wish I was going to Alaska.
Yeah, I'm excited about Origins, but Alaska would be pretty dang cool.
Yeah, dude, I love
We are
Alaska.
excited about that. But in the worlds of gaming, I think that there will be probably minimal gameplay while we're there.
Find a bear and chuck some dice.
So
Now, I know
Take some Carnegie pieces with you. Protection.
The gear,
I think
it does some damage.
Blue Peg, Pink Peg, they have their mom and dad live in that Alaska and have an Airbnb there, which they've put their board games there. So, I mean, if you want to find a good Airbnb, we should look that up so that you can stay there and play some board games.
There you go.
I mean, how big could Alaska be?
No, that's
right?
what I was going to say. It's probably the same place. It's commuter distance.
What do you know? I found it.
Alaska,
Shouting distance.
Texas. I mean, those are tiny
Small
places.
That's
So
funny.
one other thing I wanted to mention, and this kind of ties into closing out the end of the episode. You know, we have a BGG guild, right? One of the things that I've been working on is creating a Discord server for the longest turn. And it's not done yet. I don't have a link to put out there with the episode, but we're working on it, finalizing at least the initial version of it with all the channels and getting it finished. Maybe we'll put it out after Origins, the link for it, and hopefully start interacting more with some of our listeners and creating a community of longest turn fans. Right.
We even had somebody offer to potentially moderate the Discord for us, which I thought was great because if it's only us moderating it,
That was my hesitation with doing it as well, and that was my friend Jason, who lives back east, and he mentioned that, and I was like, "Score 100%, yes, please." You know, so I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I think it'll be cool. I enjoy going on like rolling dice and taking names, the discussion phase, blue peg, pink peg. There's tons of Discord servers already. I enjoy talking to people about games and other things. And
we've had a pseudo longest turn Discord that's kind of internal, right? That we do a lot of our discussion of what we're excited about, games that are coming out. We post our news and we talk about different things. We've done Wordles and all those other types of things that are fun. And I'm excited to bring that to the Longest Turn podcast community at large, and hopefully get to know more people in the board gaming circles and interact with more people.
And building that community would just be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be super cool.
And interacting with people, that's great. It's one of my favorite things about doing this is if it, what we say strikes a chord with somebody and we can talk to them about it. That's just awesome. I love that.
Well, for me, I've been doing a lot of work traveling, and I've had the opportunity to play with other people because I had connections with other potential board gamers in different locations. And the more I travel, the more I would love to, like, hey, if I'm around and you want to play, I'd love to play games because I don't want to just sit in my hotels all the time.
So yeah, Discord coming soon. Not picking a date, but it's in the works, and we look forward to having that up.
And with that, I think that wraps up this episode of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Board Game Geek, where you can see all of our episodes posted on our blog. You can also check our guild out, which is Guild 3947. If you want more content in your life from the Longest Turn, be sure to check out our Instagram feed, especially with Kevin and Tyler and Ben going to Origins, where we'll post some pictures of that. If you're going to be there, they'd love more information about meeting up potentially. But also, we'd love to play games with you. So if you're on Board Game Arena, we have a guild there, the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. Join our guild and ask us to play games. We'll play just about anything. We may not be good at all of it, but we'll be willing to play. So for that wraps up our episode 13 of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Tot ziens.
Goodbye.
Nos vemos.
Later.
In this episode, we are going to
Knew it.
And then we'll talk about the things that we've been discussing. And then we'll talk about the things we've been discussing.
This is our first episode. On that stack of tiles. I'm saying tiles a lot, but it's the garden expansion. Let me start over. Okay. You cursed me before.
What did I do?
You said that the least amount of editing is me.
All right, Mark, what have you been?
Yep, so that is Azul not Summer Pavilion. It looks as if you're ready to speak.
Or maybe eat the microphone.
I reserve that for pieces.
That's been my favorite part so far.
Yeah. Carnegie is designed by Xavier. Okay.
No, that's a different multiplier.
It's
Never
one of the
mind.
multipliers.
It's one of them.
It's one of them.
And it's a
Yeah,
lot. It can
my train
potentially-
of thought is
Did you
completely
say
off.
train of thought?
I did.
Zing!
I'm going to say all the things you're going to say.
I know, right? No, I don't want to go first. I want to go first. No. Mark, go
Do you want to go first? I'll go first.
Mark, go first.
Do you want to go
I'll go
first? Or do
first.
you want to let you skaters?
Yeah.